Everyone, whether it's individuals, academic institutions, healthcare institutions, governments, will be defined by how they react to what's going on in Gaza.
I mean, it's almost humiliating that Nick had to take a laminated picture of a burnt, charred body to a politician. You know, are you kidding me? Are you blind? You know, we are living this in real time. You can have no excuse to say, well, actually, well, that's news to me.
But the advocacy piece is, in some ways, especially at this point in time, almost more important, because we need to be amplifying the voices of Palestinian healthcare workers, and we need to be advocating for them. And so these institutions that haven't contacted us, they will be hearing from us.
Israel has been doing exactly the same for 76 years. The difference this time, it's no longer hidden. People know it everywhere.
Effectively, the globe is with the Palestinians. It's the power structure that isn't. It's incumbent on every single one of you to speak out.
You are not only a doctor, you are also an advocate. You are a witness to a genocide. And there's enormous power because of your dedication to your patients. And because of that dedication, you have a right to speak up for them, to stand by them.
Okay, Tayab, I'm going to give you a break now. Thank you for those very convincing answers. So next question is for Tahseen. Doctors, we love to be heroes. We love to save people. What can doctors who are going to Gaza really do for the Palestinian people? I mean, the healthcare infrastructure has been destroyed. There's nothing you can do now, is there?
Just a point of correction. If you're in this to be a hero, then you're the wrong person. We're not in this to be heroes, to be perfectly frank with you. I'm sure Nick will agree with this, that there's an element of discomfort sitting here because it comes with a sort of a celebrity element to it, which isn't very comfortable. The reason we put ourselves outside our comfort zone is because actually there's a narrative that needs to come out. What can doctors do from here? Having been there in Gaza, when you're in Gaza, your mobile signal's off, your internet's off. They've been like that for the best part of 8 months. So going just tells them that somebody cares, and they that somebody gives a damn, because they're just blind out there. They're deaf and blind. They don't know what's happening. They don't know that forums like this are happening, and it's desperately important that we let them know that we do care, however we can. And by the way, my skill mix is such that I'm lucky enough to go out there, but everybody in this room has something they can offer. And I say to people, if you're good at the written word, write the written word. If you're good at arguing, argue, whatever you, and don't feel anybody in this room has any lesser role to play than anybody on this panel. That's one of the things I want to say. The other thing is that what can we do? To be brutally honest with you, Nick and I as doctors, we do not have the expertise that they have in dealing with war injuries and war wounds. So why do we go? To give us their support. Why do we go? Because they have incessantly been in hospital for 80 days in a row, and you operate with somebody and you realize they're then going to go home in inverted commas, which is a 3x3 tarpaulined area within the hospital, which is where their family and their pots and their pans and everything are. So it's giving that support, it's providing relief. And we made the conscious decision to not become, this sort of, I'm going to coin a phrase, but a knight in shining armor coming and telling them how to do things. Actually, we're here to support you. Tell us how you need us to help you. That's what we provided. But it's relief for these doctors because, as you know, 70% of the nurses on the wards are volunteers. That there's a complete breakdown of the healthcare system. Doctors are going missing. Okay, I'm not going to use the word targeted, but our house was hit. But 650 healthcare workers have actually died. But because they happen to be Palestinian, there's almost an irrelevance about them. And I mean that in the best possible way. So providing relief, providing support, and just letting them know that actually there are people out there that care.
Thank you, Tahseen. So I've been told I've got 5 minutes before we move to audience questions, but I've got 2 really important questions, one for Nick, one for Amira. I do want, as if possible, brief answers, but they're really important questions. So many healthcare workers don't understand how powerful they are. They're powerful because they're trusted, they're evidence-based, they're objective, they're impartial, and people trust them more than politicians. But despite that, many healthcare leaders have been afraid to speak out. You're a very senior healthcare leader who's got a lot to lose, and you have decided to speak out. At the moment, we've had 35 motions published by the British Medical Association just recently trying to stop what's happening in Gaza. And the committee within the BMA, which is considering those motions, has said quite publicly they're worried about being accused of anti-Semitism. What would you say? I mean, I'm going to be open here. We were in a meeting, weren't we, with very senior people within the BMA who said we have been accused of anti-Semitism. This was a discussion about what we should be doing for the people of Gaza. And some people might ask, well, it's irrelevant if you've been accused of anti-Semitism when you're being asked about what the BMA should be doing for the people of Gaza. But we had that in this group meeting that you were part of. What would you say to healthcare leaders about speaking out?
Be braver. I have a lot of sympathy for much younger medical students and doctors who are frightened or not sure whether they can speak out, because we have all heard of many instances of people's careers being damaged and they are much more vulnerable. I have far less sympathy for people in senior positions towards the end of their careers, and I think they need to be braver. I mean, I would point out to them, they're not politicians particularly, they should be behaving in a humanitarian way. And that is the rule of thumb I've tried to follow throughout all of this, is really presented all from a humanitarian perspective. Of course, you can't separate the politics from it completely, but if your main focus is to point out what's going on from a humanitarian perspective, then I think everyone should be brave enough to do it. What Taz said was correct. Everyone can do something. Everyone needs to stand up. Everyone, whether it's individuals, academic institutions, healthcare institutions, governments, will be defined by how they react to what's going on in Gaza. And I'm afraid to say that we have been let down by our academic and our healthcare institutions in this country, and I suspect elsewhere in the world. And I think they need to be braver.
Thank you very much, Prof. Maynard. Thank you, Nick. And the final question from myself for Amira. So you've told us a bit about the financial story, the story of Palestinian healthcare provision, and the way it's constructed in a way to perpetuate the subjugation of the Palestinian people. Tell us about what you think about the importance of Palestinian sovereignty over healthcare and what needs to happen to rebuild the Palestinian healthcare system, and what can people in this hall, it's a big question, what can people in this hall do to make that happen?
All right, so let's break it down. I mean, I think when we're talking about Palestinian sovereignty, we can't have that conversation without acknowledging that Palestinian healthcare also needs to be owned by Palestinians. Because as long as Israel has control over our bodily autonomy, we will never be able to be free. And we need both, right? So we need to be working to end the occupation. This isn't just about a ceasefire. This is about ending the occupation and ending the apartheid, but also addressing the root cause for the occupation and for the apartheid, and that is Zionism. And that doesn't just exist in Israel or across Palestine, as we've heard. This Zionist ideology has managed to infiltrate academic institutions, political institutions, healthcare institutions. You know, we're hearing about our doctors, our healthcare workers who are here in the UK trying to advocate simply for Palestinian healthcare workers to have the right to do their work without fear of being bombed, without fear of their families being attacked, without fear of being abducted and tortured and killed. And so without having both the Palestinian healthcare being owned by Palestinians, and without addressing the root causes that I've just outlined, then Palestinians won't be free and Palestine won't be free.
That's the first part.
And what can we do?
I mean, it's been said here on the panel, I think it's really important that it's not just about a skill that you have. It's about a passion that you have. So maybe you're an accountant, but you love photography, or maybe you're a doctor, but you love cooking or writing. And I say that it's more about focusing on your passions rather than your skills, because this has to be a sustainable action that we're taking, because the road to freedom is long. And as I said before, this isn't just about advocating for a ceasefire. This is about ending the occupation and addressing the root cause, Zionism, once and for all. And so I think, Dr. Taz pointed out that as doctors, people might look up to you or any of us speaking up here as certain experts, but I can tell you from my own personal experience, I started as a Palestinian who grew up in Australia in the diaspora, who studied nursing, who always knew that she wanted to go back to her homeland to do what she could do. But I didn't know what I was doing. I just started to take one step after the other. And it's the same thing with Dr. Omar and the other doctors that co-founded Health Workers for Palestine. It was just literally following your instincts and taking one step after the other. Have those conversations with your communities, with each other. Just take those steps forwards and just make sure that what you're focusing on is the end goal, which is ending the occupation once and for all.
So I think it's time to move on to the audience questions. Do you think I'm going to be given a computer? Because my phone has just had an operational failure. Thank you. So Miriam, if you can close me down when we run out of time, and we'll just keep going through these questions in the meantime. So the first question. UK politics. Anyone of the panel who wants to take this question. With the general elections coming up, which political party can we vote for that will actually prioritise the Palestinian situation? Anyone want to take that question? Tayab, thank you.
In the local elections, I put a tweet out, don't vote for genocide, right? And I think that's the point. I think there is no way, as a recent resignee of the Labour Party, that I could vote for the Labour Party under the stewardship of Keir Starmer. By the way, you know, I'm not telling you what to do, I'm telling you what I'm going to not do. I've issued a war crimes complaint against senior members of the Conservative Party in government, so I couldn't vote for them either, right? And so what I'm going to do is to vote for anybody else in my local area that has good values. And I want to just expand on this a little bit, because people say to me, I live in an area where there's not very many Muslims, and I live in an area where the Palestine issue is not really commonplace amongst my neighbours. And so people say to me, what's Gaza got to do and what's politics got to do with me when I'm worried about school, I'm worried about the doctor's appointments, I'm worried about welfare benefits, I'm worried about that type of thing, I'm worried about the cost of living crisis. And I say, yeah, I'm worried about all of that too. I'm worried that my school doesn't have a mathematician. But what does Gaza tell me? I'll tell you what it tells me. It tells me the nature of the political beast that I'm going to vote for. If a person sees devastation across the globe, sees war crimes happening and excuses it, I can't trust that person. How can I trust that person? Do I think I can trust that person to put my children's interests at home first? Absolutely not. Because what they're doing is for whatever political, personal, financial ambition they've put before the lives of thousands of people, tens of thousands of people in Gaza, whatever they were listening to, whoever they were listening to, whatever made them make that decision, means to me that that person will listen to the same thing when it comes to my school, my hospital, welfare benefits, protecting the weak and the vulnerable at home. And so I can't trust that person. That's what Gaza means on a local political level.
Thank you, Tayab. So the next question's got a great title, What Can We Do? And this is for Amira. And I know a lot of healthcare professionals are thinking this. How can we as healthcare professionals get involved in voluntary medical services to support Gaza?
So I think the first protocol is to join the health workers for Palestine cohort wherever you are. So we are across 45 different cities in the UK now and 70 across the globe. And we reached that by the end of December last year. And, you know, I think it's difficult at the moment, obviously, with what's happened in Rafah and the closing of the border. The ability to enter to volunteer on the ground in Gaza is very difficult. So I think by staying attached to Health Workers for Palestine is a first step, but also, you know, the West Bank has suffered almost the same number of attacks against healthcare. And just recently we saw what happened in Jenin. And, you know, look to organizations like the Palestinian Medical Relief Society or even MAP, who do work on the ground in the West Bank as well. For the West Bank, there's still the option of telemedicine, which enables health workers from all disciplines to be involved. And, you know, we're building also through Health Workers for Palestine and through our relationships, a body of sort of, let's say, health workers essentially to be able to tap into telemedicine for Gaza when we have internet connection and communication is stable. And I would say that I understand the sort of inclination to want to go into Palestine or to help specifically within Palestine, but currently, based on what I've seen in Cairo, there is a huge amount of need for Palestinians that have come out from Gaza for healthcare. And I really believe that digital health and telehealth can make a really big difference. And so that's why I urge you to join Health Workers for Palestine. I'm not just putting a plug in. You know, we're sort of connected across the work that's happening both here in the UK, around the world, but specifically in Egypt and in Palestine. So.
Thank you. And now, Nick, the next one is for you. So you've been the chair of AUGIS, is that the right pronunciation? The Association of Upper GI Surgeons of Great Britain and Ireland. How do we get British associations and institutions to recognise the genocide and targeting of medics?
I think it's very difficult. I think you need to find like-minded. There are a lot of people of my generation who have been contacting me and saying, fantastic what you're doing, you're standing up, talking about this. And as Taz said, it's because we've seen things that we need to tell people about. And a lot of people have commented and said, yes, it's fantastic. And my response to them always has been, well, you need to start speaking up as well. Whether you've seen us or not, you can provide testimony which might be secondhand. And I've said that to a lot of people in very senior surgical positions, the majority of whom have not felt able, for whatever reason, to stand up and be heard. I think and there's many other people like me who've tried to do this, but they are, as I've said earlier, they are, hesitate to say cowardly, but they're not brave enough. And I've said to them repeatedly, you've just got to do what is right. This is the right thing to do. It's not about politics. It's not complicated. Too many people say it's very complicated. It's not complicated at all, actually. Some of the history might be a bit complicated, but they've got to do what's right. So I would urge to continue passing that message on.
Thank you. Next question. I think this could be thrown at anyone, but I'm going to throw this one at Amira again. I think you know the answer. Well, I know the answer to this. But I'm just interested because you're the chief executive of a grassroots movement of health workers who want to do something for Palestine, and it's been very effective. And the question is, there are many medical colleges in central London, such as the Royal Society of Medicine. Have they reached out to you in solidarity? The medical establishment?
No. It's a very short answer. No, they haven't. And actually what I want to touch on, sort of going back to the first question, is that we need health workers and healthcare students that are advocating for us here and around the globe as well. So it's just as important to sort of be on the ground doing the physical medical work. And I understand the satisfaction as a healthcare worker that you get when you're there on the ground face to face helping people, because, you know, that's why we do what we do. But the advocacy piece is, in some ways, especially at this point in time, almost more important, because we need to be amplifying the voices of Palestinian healthcare workers and we need to be advocating for them. And so these institutions that haven't contacted us, they will be hearing from us.
Thank you. I think this is a question for Tahseen, and I think it's a good question for you, Tahseen, because I did allude to this very briefly, but we didn't go into it in any detail. But before all of this horrible catastrophe happened, you were heavily involved in trying to set up tertiary services for cancer surgery in Gaza. This war is going to finish. Israel is losing, believe it or not. And there will need to be a period of rebuilding. And it's just been completely destroyed. So if, from your experience of building NHS services in this country, how would you go about establishing a healthcare system for Gaza?
And on that note, can I just add a quick vignette here, just to illustrate what's happening in Gaza at the moment? So unfortunately, we all remember the Manchester bombings. So the Manchester bombings took a first world healthcare system 3 weeks to clear the decks, to make sure that everybody was dealt with. Gaza is dealing with probably 2 or 3 Manchester equivalents every single day in a healthcare system that's on its knees. My suggestion is that it's non-existent. It's just not fit for purpose. So that's just some context. So that leads into your question. I mean, my goodness, how can you set up? Well, the first thing is to have a willing, to have a willing and have to have a group of people, whether it's healthcare workers of Palestine, whoever, to plan. And we're already planning for when, not if, when this finishes. And I have to be very I have to take emotion out of it, because if I bring emotion into it, you tend to fall into a well of despair. And what we're planning for, and people have asked, what can we do? If it's something as simple as just adding £1 into the coffers of charities. Charities have got a deal of money at the moment. Let me give you an example. I won't name names, but there's a charity that told me that they've got about £80 million in the coffers, and you think, well, that's a lot of money. But just in my hospital, the healthcare budget for my hospital is about £250 million in 1 year. So actually, it's a drop in the ocean. But there's going to come time when the starter pistol will start and we have to provide a healthcare service and a system. So the more money we can get into the coffers, and if you're, as like Amira says, if you're a surgeon that bakes, well, do a cake bake sale, whatever it takes to get money into the coffers. We're already talking with senior management in certain, and I think we need to just acknowledge the fact that we've got a couple of VIPs in the audience as well. I saw Husam Zomlot come in, and we've got Swee Chai as well, who's one of the founder members of a Palestinian charity. But we're already making plans to decide what we do. If that's a rebuild within Gaza, I'm really hopeful that that's what it's going to be. Bricks and mortars take months and years. So we're in contact with people that do modular builds. So modular builds are things that take 6 weeks to come to fruition and 2 or 3 days to pick up. So modular builds. What if Gaza does not exist anymore? Take the emotion out of it. Well, then it's about developing hospitals in North Sinai. And we're already talking about modular builds in North Sinai, having a hub and spoke. You have a central hub where all the complex stuff goes. Because remember, we're talking about 2 million people. That's not easy to look after. And then the spoke hospitals in the periphery. So the answer is we're already planning. The answer is that there's a huge will amongst the people in this room and out with this room, and even people that might be watching this. My suggestion and request and plea to you would be to keep this on front page news. I think one of the things that worries me, Nick, you sort of alluded to it, is that this is almost becoming back page news now. It's been going on for so long. In my hospital, there's almost an apathy that, okay, that's Gaza, that's what happens in Gaza. But it's forums like this and it's panels like this that just explaining that actually this isn't what happens in Gaza. It doesn't need to happen in Gaza, and we need to change things. I think that answers your question.
Thank you, Tahseen. And I think, Tayab, you wanted to come in. If I can ask you just to come in briefly on this, because we've got our final question.
Sure, no problem. Part of the work I did with ICJP was to lobby states. So we've totaled at least 26 states, either head of state all the way down to ambassador level so far. I was traveling to them and then coming here. And one of them, we lobbied them in respect of international humanitarian law, accountability, but also the medical infrastructure rebuilding day after, day one after. And one of the state level financiers, if you like, said something to me, which is, why am I going to put 20 million pounds, 30 million pounds, 100 million pounds into a hospital for Israel to bomb it again? And I think this is a really important point to take on board. We can't just rebuild the health infrastructure, however necessary it is. We have to do that. That's not the only thing we have to do. We have to make sure that Israel is put into a position after this event that it can never be allowed to do it ever again. And that includes its ally, the United States.
So, very powerful words from Tayab. Our final question is a bit of a surprise. So, I'm sure most of you have realized by now that we have a very special guest in the audience. We're very honored to have Dr. Husam Zomlot here. And I've been handed a... I've been handed a question for Dr. Zomlot. So I'm going to read that out and then I'm going to give you my microphone so you can respond. So the question is, for decades, the Western world and the Zionist entity has made a mockery of Palestinian statehood. There have been countless international agreements, accords, and memoranda. The offensive in Rafah, in open defiance of the ICJ and calls for humanity, is just another horrific example. How do you still hope? Are Palestinians hearing about events like this one, protests around the world? What gives them and what gives you strength and belief? And what more can we do to make our voices even louder? Thank you, Dr. Zomlot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Akhi Musa. And what gives us hope is people like you, Musa, and the panelists here, all friends, the doctors and the health workers for Palestine, Dr. Omar, and the people in this hall. Meetings like this are very well followed in Palestine. You'll be surprised that they know every single detail. They know your names, they know what you do, they follow you. And you will be also surprised that this is exactly what has been enabling them to keep going in such darkest of moments. They know that they are not alone. So allow me first to begin by thanking every and each one of you for giving that hope all through these dark 8 months from day one. And doctors, nurses, health workers have been in the forefront of this. And as a Palestinian ambassador to the UK, I am so proud of you, Omar. I'm so proud of British doctors who have really been in the forefront from day one. I just heard that actually by December, health workers for Palestine have achieved all this only a few weeks after the aggression began. So London, the UK, has become the epicenter. The delegations that were sent, the doctors that attended, made British medical sector exceptional in its humanitarian universalist approach and contributions. Do we have hope, Musa? Or that's all what have allowed us to sustain for all these decades, Musa? It's hope. If there is one reason why I stand here before you representing the Palestinian people, and why we still have Palestinian people, and why we're still fighting for our rights, it's hope. But the last 8 months have been awful there, including last night, as you may all have followed. Israel bombing a safe zone, tense, UN compounds dropping 2,000 pounds bombs, that horrible scene of babies, women being butchered by US provided weapons. Yet we do have hope, because guess what? Israel has been doing exactly the same for 76 years. The difference this time, it's no longer hidden. People know it everywhere. And I believe Israel has lost the war on the 8th of October. Has lost completely, irreversibly. They cannot repair it. What kind of an army would pride itself with the killing of women, children, innocent people? You're talking about more than 35. Israel has butchered 70% of them are women and children. What kind of an army would pride itself or show any sign of victory by devastating our infrastructure, hospitals, schools, mosques, churches, what have you? They've lost, but this is our time that we win. We win, and we go all the way. That's the hope. Number one, we must continue fighting for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. We cannot leave it only to politicians here and there. We should not let go of this. Because so far, with all the odds, Netanyahu and his government are pressing ahead. Number two, we must make sure that the issue of reconstruction and rebuilding and humanitarian aid is prepared yesterday, not to wait until a ceasefire is there, because as we just heard, the needs are immense. Number three, accountability. Let this be the last time. And the only way we can ensure that this is the last time is by bringing these war criminals to accountability. There is no other way. There is no other way. We must never, ever allow our children to be slaughtered this way again. And the never again can only be achieved when we hold these criminals to account. Number four, sanctions. Sanctions. And this is not a demand, it is the obligation of every contracting party of international law. Every third party that still provides Israel, genocidal Israel, with weapons is complicit in the war crimes. So each country, including the UK, must immediately impose an arms embargo on the genocidal state of Israel. And the list of sanctions that we must all work for are long. We must sanction the illegal settlers, the illegal settlement products. We must sanction the companies that profit from the illegality and from our stolen land and stolen resources. And we are not inventing the wheel here. It was only international sanctions and the anti-apartheid movement that brought down the apartheid regime of South Africa. And this is our obligation, this is our calling, to suck oxygen out of this occupation. And I tell you, the global international efforts in the last few months have started showing. Because, ordinary people are marking illegality by their own stomachs and pockets. And it's very effective. And we've got to continue. And lastly is the issue of recognition, the question. Sorry it took my time to get to your question, but this is the roadmap for us. Why are we insisting on recognition? Because, Musa, we were cancelled. The people of Palestine were cancelled 107 years ago. Guess by who? And guess where? exactly where you're sitting right now. We were cancelled by a declaration by the colonial Britain or British government at the time that turned us, the original native population of the land that lived there for millennia, into merely non-Jewish minorities. When in fact at the time we were 98% of the population owning 96% of the land. And we were cancelled 3 times. First by the Balfour Declaration and that colonial arrogance and the British mandate. Then we were cancelled by the creation of Israel and Zionism, that exclusionist strategy and ideology. 2/3 of the nation were ethnically cleansed, and we were cancelled ever since then by every country, every capital, every government that has given Israel a veto power over our right to self-determination and statehood, including London. And that's why today we're telling everybody, if you do not recognize the state of Palestine, you are definitely complicit, not only in war crimes, but in the cancellation of the Palestinian people. So this is a process when we have to uncancel us and remedy a historic injustice that has been inflicted on us. That's number one. Number two, recognition of the state of Palestine is not a gift. It isn't a favor. It isn't a reward by anybody. This is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people, and must have been granted long ago. It's long overdue, and every country that hasn't done so has led us to where we are today, genocide. And finally, all those who argue, including the British government, that recognition has to come after negotiations and a peace process between the two sides. Seriously? Are you kidding me? Did you wait for a negotiation process between us and Israelis when you recognize Israel on day one? Why is it when it comes to the Palestinian issue, you mince your words and you try to throw the can down the road? Because you are not interested, you are not serious, you're double-faced, you're double-talking. Double-talking. Did you consult us when you promised our land in the first place? Recognition has got nothing to do with negotiation. And if you say it has to wait for negotiations, what does it mean? It means Israel has to accept. That's what it means. It means you give Israel the veto power. That's what it means. Seriously? You don't know that Israel is so adamantly against the creation of a Palestinian state? They tell you Netanyahu is so publicly proud that he is against a state of Palestine. And therefore, that's why today we are focused on getting that recognition. And on all of your behalf, I salute here Spain, Norway, and Ireland for doing what they've done in last week. They deserve your applause. And I salute South Africa for pressing ahead with accountability. And I salute Nicaragua for taking third-party complicit to the ICJ. And the last salute is for Swee here, Dr. Swee, because I love her so much, and we all love her so much for what she has been doing for a long time, since Sabra and Shatila. You are a mountain, Swee, a mountain of humanity and solidarity and devotion. And all these wonderful doctors are just taking your footstep and learning from your wonderful, inspiring history. So I will bow in front of you and tell you all, thank you very much.
I don't know how to follow that. I think it's, Umra's turn now. I just wanted to, do I thank the panel or do you want to thank the panel? You'll thank the panel. Okay, I'll thank the panel and then you can thank the panel. So, all I can say is it's been an amazing event. We've had some amazing speakers. We've had the presence of the Palestinian Ambassador, who's given us some very inspirational words. I just want to go back to what I said at the beginning of this, that this is not about us, this is about you. For those of you who are nurses and doctors and other healthcare workers, you are trusted more than politicians. And for those of you who are not nurses or doctors, you are still trusted more than politicians. So you really, this is your time, and this is going to happen. This is inevitable that Palestine will be free, but its inevitability lies in your hands. So with that, please, thank you to the whole panel, and we'll finish this event.
Musa, sorry to interrupt, but we've got this special guest here and we can't not let her speak. So Dr. Swee, this microphone's for you.
Hey. Dr. Zomlot, well, I think all that he said is completely true, except the bit about me. It's also true in one way, I'm older than everybody else, okay? But I just want to say one thing. All this wonderful, and there's so much to do. I just want to thank the young people who know how difficult it is to walk with the Palestinians, and yet you have come with them. I was with one of the encampment, and then we broke the gate, and we thought it was wonderful, and the students all got served, trespassing notice and so on. So the younger generation are the people who is going to carry this on. I would be dead by the time Palestinian is free. I hope not, but if it is, so be it, okay? We always know that if I don't get back to Palestine with Dr. Zomlot, you will, okay? And then the other thing is I want to address the panel, and this is for you, Tayab. How do we protect the wonderful young people who are standing out and have everything to lose, but yet support Palestine? I mean, I'm old, I can go and break the law. Who cares, If the police come, it's not a problem, okay? I don't pay a mortgage. Nobody can sack me, But the young people, maybe let him say a few words as to what we can do to support and encourage the younger generation, because you are the reason that we have hope. You are our inspiration for Palestine, and thank you for all the sacrifices you made.
Thank you, Swee. And you're one of my heroes, right? Right at the top of the list. Look, it's a really important, I'm going to keep it short because of time, but it's really important. Each one of you, Israel spends so much money and so much energy on its advocacy. It doesn't do that because it's not important. It does that because it's absolutely important. The number of Palestinians that are in the diaspora is huge. The number of people that support Palestinians in the diaspora are huge. The number is phenomenal. Each one of those people in its network has thousands and thousands or hundreds of people, amounting to millions. But effectively, the globe is with the Palestinians. It's the power structure that isn't. It's incumbent on every single one of you to speak out on your social media, in your workplace, with your neighbors, with your family, with your friends. But when you do it with responsibility. There is no need to allow the frustration of the situation to allow you to make you say things that will get you into trouble. And so there's a whole, the best way to know what you can and cannot say without getting into trouble is to follow ICJP on our social media and also my Twitter, because I'm quite aggressive, as you've heard, but I'm not aggressive in a way that will get me into trouble because it's not necessary. There is so much that we can say that is important and effective without allowing our frustrations to overtake us. That's the best way that we can protect ourselves in the first instance. The second thing, I just want to give an earmark to ICJP and ELSC, two organizations that if you do get into trouble, if you contact them, they will try their best to help you. It's not always possible, so please excuse us if you've tried to contact us and capacity for us has been an issue. But if you do contact us, we will eventually get back to you and help you.
Thank you, Tayab. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to extend by a few minutes because we've got a question from a British doctor who's in Gaza right now, and we have to respond to this question. I think it's a question for either Mira, Tahseen, or Nick. And this message is written to us with the sound of drones in the sky and strikes over Rafah. That's what this doctor has written. And his question is, what are the moral and political demands on healthcare workers who have borne witness to genocide against the Palestinian people? What does this mean for medicine more broadly as a political practice? So I think it's talking about the bridge between our responsibility to our patients, almost turning us into political actors. Do you want to take this, Amira?
I might start. Sorry, I'm a bit emotional because I think I know who that is. When you become a health worker, pretty much from day one, you're taught that every single person has the right to healthcare. And, you know, as I think it was Dr. Nick that mentioned that he had treated a prisoner at some stage. And I know in my nursing career that I also treated a prisoner, and you treat every single person that comes through that door in the same way. And you focus on the care that you need to give, and you give that care to the best of your ability. As healthcare workers outside of Palestine, we cannot carry that principle in our everyday work and know what is happening in Palestine, specifically to our healthcare colleagues in particular, and to the healthcare infrastructure, where we know, and it's not just the physical sense of hospitals and clinics and ambulances and our teams being attacked. Healthcare is an ecosystem that depends on food systems. You know, they've bombed and damaged our food systems, our water supply, our universities is also part of our healthcare. You know, we need to be looking at things from a holistic perspective. So as healthcare workers that have the privilege and the safety of working outside where we are protected and we know that we're going to be protected, you cannot be working in this space and knowing what your healthcare colleagues in Gaza and your, you know, who could be potentially your patients, just everyday Palestinians, and not advocate for them. And I think that, you know, to the sort of political aspect of that question, healthcare is shaped by politics. There's no way around that. And so, you know, if we are watching what is happening in Palestine with that first hospital that was bombed, and we knew that if they were allowed, Israel was allowed to get away with this, we knew that this was going to set a precedent, and we knew that every single hospital in Gaza, and now we're starting to see it in the West Bank, and there's barely any news about it, there's barely any voice about it. And so when we're talking about protecting the healthcare infrastructure in Palestine, we're also talking about protecting healthcare around the world. Around the world. If we allow this, if we're okay with this to happen in Palestine, this is okay anywhere else in the world. And the only reason this is being allowed to happen comes back to a racist ideology that sees Palestinian lives as less than. And as healthcare workers, you cannot carry that duality. It's one or the other. So I think that, you know, we need to be looking at things from a holistic perspective and understanding that it's connected. And our healthcare workers in Palestine are not just heroes for Palestine, they're heroes for humanity, because they've dedicated their lives and they've put their lives at risk every single day, and not just since the 7th of October. They live and work under occupation every single day.
Absolutely beautifully put. We both know who that question has come from, and our thoughts are with him at the moment, who is being beyond brave in staying out there when he could have come out. This is the absolute essence of why I go to Gaza, and I think why a lot of us go to Gaza, and why we feel an absolute duty, moral, professional, to go and help the people out there. We all have different reasons perhaps for going to Gaza in the first place. We've all fallen in love with it. Taz, I think, said it beautifully earlier. Once you go to Gaza, you keep wanting to go back. It's a beautiful country. There's a very, very beautiful people there. I have people who I consider to be family out there. We all do. And when we saw very rapidly after October the 7th what was happening, it was the absolute core of many of us that we had to be there to go and help. And to me, it's I said earlier, this is not complicated, this is simple. It's the absolute essence of being a healthcare worker, wanting to go and help there, and it remains so.
Just being the last person to field that question, it's very difficult to add anything more to the two eloquent voices before me. But all I'll say is that as a doctor, as a nurse, I'm blind. So what do I mean by the fact that I'm blind? I don't look at the person in front of me. They might be purple, they might be yellow, they might be black, they might be 50, or they might be 5, or they might be older than me. You're blind to all that. So you treat whoever you treat, and there is no baggage. You do what you do. You know, why do people like Nick and I go? I mean, I'm speaking, I'm sure, for both of us, but, you know, we've been born into privilege. You know, I was afforded an education. I was afforded food and drink when I was able to. I was afforded a roof over my head. But I also know that people there have not been born into privilege. If I was born, I've got no control where I was born. I can't control that. I could just as easily have been born there. And if I was born there, I'd be begging for help and I'd be asking for help. So that's why we do this, because it's the right thing to do. So that's the moral obligation. And to be perfectly frank with you, politicians, I don't know, I mean, politicians are born like us, aren't they? And they grow up like us. And they seem to just cross this threshold when they become politicians. This is not politics. This is not race. It's not religion. This is just pure humanity. Is that how can you, and to be perfectly frank, I mean, it's almost humiliating that Nick had to take a laminated picture of a burnt, charred body to a politician. You know, are you kidding me? Are you blind? You know, we are living this in real time. You can have no excuse to say, well, actually, well, that's news to me. So what does happen to politicians? They lose this humanity. I don't understand. Somebody will have to explain that to me. But what we can do other than treating people is we can put ourselves in front of these cameras and feel quite uncomfortable fielding questions from Dr. Qureshi there. But it's about just explaining a narrative. This is what's happening. This is what we saw. That's our moral and political obligation. And if we have to do that in another forum, we have to do that in another forum. But that's how I'd answer that question.
So we're going to go to Swee for some final words. She always offers us great words of wisdom. And then we're going to go to Umar and we're going to close the event. But
okay.
Go ahead.
I just want to talk to the doctor in Gaza. Okay. I was faced with this question 42 years ago. As a doctor, your patient trusts you with their life, and it's an honor, whether you're a doctor or a nurse. They share with you their sorrow, their fears, their death, their family, the ones they love. And many times, during situations, the patients will actually give me a written piece of paper to give to their family. So, as health workers, we are technical people. We are endowed technical expertise. But what makes us different from a robot or an uncaring piece of machine, and what makes you different from some of the doctors who don't care, is because you are a human being. You are not only a doctor, you are also an advocate. You are a witness to a genocide. And there's enormous power because of your dedication to your patients. And because of that dedication, you have a right to speak up for them, to stand by them. And sometimes it's highly inconvenient because there'll be a lot of voices saying that, oh, doctors must be neutral. NGOs must be neutral. The neutrality applies only in a situation when there's no conflict. To be neutral in a situation of a genocide is completely, I don't know what to describe. Maybe Tayab can find a word for me. It is actually taking sides. It is being part of it. I salute you. I'm very proud of you. But sometimes you must also get exhausted. So remember, you're also human. You have to rest when you can, even if you're sleeping in the operating theater and lock the door so that nobody can come in. That you must do. You can cry with your patient. You can worry for them. But on top of all, you are a witness for them. When they have no voice, your voice is their voice. And speak up for them. And when you have a chance, also stand with them. When you come back and I'm excluded from going anywhere in Palestine now, okay? I want to apply for a Palestine passport, maybe I can go, but I think yeah. So I can't go now, I got a ban, many years ban, okay? But even here in London or anywhere in the world, you can talk about them. And it is a duty and an honor and a privilege to be able to stand with them and speak up for them, to give them voice.